Hi, everybody. This is Bold Strokes Books preview reading panel featuring our, it's October, right?
Yeah.
I'm the only one. So
It's Wednesday, but it's October, yeah.
So we are featuring our November releases, which go on sale in just about a week or so. We have the lovely Melissa Brayden, the lovely Jane Walsh, and the perhaps arguably even lovelier Leigh Hays. We are hoping that Sherry Lewis Wall will join us soon. With technology, you're never quite sure, but I hope she will be able to make it. And we have a recording from Joy Argento, who unfortunately couldn't make it, but was fortunate enough to record a reading for your pleasure.
Awesome.
If you don't know me, my name is Sandy. I am Bold Strokes Books Senior Editor, and this is BSB Preview. Okay, we have an opener question for our authors because I need 30 seconds to set up the Facebook Live. So that question is, what inspired you to believe that you could be a writer? What inspired that first book, that first kind of decision to sit down and start writing? So we are going to go Melissa Brayden, Jane Walsh, Leigh Hays, and you're all going to ignore me for just a little bit.
Okay, so is that our order?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Well, when I think back to when I wrote my first book, it was, picture it, 2009. And I was teaching high school theater at the time, and I was on summer break and was looking to scratch a creative itch. But the backstory of that is that I was a huge romance novel junkie. I would read as many as I could get my hands on, and had since I was probably too young to read them, which was about 12 years old. And so I had a love affair with the romance novel already. And I just had this summer and I wanted to do something creative. And I thought, I'll try writing a romance. And I picked out a subject, theater, that was very near and dear to my heart. And I didn't see a lot of theater backdrop in the romance novels that I was reading. And so I thought that could be an area I could fill. And I didn't know that I would ever submit it to a publisher or not. It was really just a labor of love for myself. But it took about a year to write, so it extended beyond the summer. And I had so much fun doing it, and I sent it off on a whim, not really thinking it would go anywhere, and was very pleased when it was accepted for publication by Bold Strokes, which was my first choice publisher. And I guess the rest is history at this point. Who is next?
Was it me? I think it might have been me.
I think it was you, Jane. Yeah.
So I'm Jane Walsh. Like Melissa, I was also a lifelong romance reader. I love the genre, but I always wanted to write. Like my whole life, I wanted to write a book. And I did make some attempts. I've got some early drafts from the early 2000s that didn't go anywhere. They weren't that great. But I always knew that I wanted to finish something. And I don't know exactly what it was that compelled me to start this particular one. My first book is coming out actually in November. This is the first book that I've actually finished and submitted anywhere. So I'm super excited about it. But I didn't know if I was going to finish it when I was writing it. I was having a great time, and I was just kind of doing what I wanted to see in a romance. And it was kind of a surprise to me when I got kind of about 3/4 through, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I think it's getting somewhere. I think I'm going to finish. And then when I did finish it, I was like, I guess I could edit it. I guess the momentum is there, and I can just keep going and keep going. And finally I did, and it was kind of a surprise to me, but it was a very happy surprise.
That's awesome.
For me, I've always wanted to write as well. And I thought I would be a journalist up until I went to college and took some classes and realized I was way too much of an introvert to really enjoy interviewing strangers. So, but I come from the fantasy and science fiction world, and that's actually really more. I wrote some fanfic and wrote some original, I don't know, some sort of fantasy thing back when I was in high school. But I got into, Xena fanfic way back in the early days. And I did National Novel Writing Month for, 4 or 5 years. And Providence was an older draft that I picked up 10 years later and said, okay, I want to live with these ladies again. And so that's how and then I submitted it after I edited it for a little bit. So, but that's how I started.
That's cool. I love that story.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a reading panel, so there must be readings according to the official rulebook. We are going to stick with Leigh Hays and start with her, if that's all right with Leigh. All right. Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself and your book. If everyone else could put themselves on mute, that would be great, because I'm going to hit speaker view so that we only see Leigh. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read an excerpt from Too Good to Be True. It is part of the Providence romance series. They're loosely connected through character connections. This story is a story about Jen, who is a divorced mother, who has a wedding fling with a younger woman, Madison. And it turns out that Madison, and she expects not to see her again, but of course she does. And it turns out that she is the social worker at her son's school. And Jen volunteers to work on a project with Madison. And I'm going to read an excerpt from probably about somewhere in the middle of the book, where they've kind of hung out for a little bit, but they're not really sure what their relationship is at this point. Madison almost let it go to voicemail, but a Saturday afternoon phone call from Jen proved too much of a temptation. She barely got in a hello before Jen asked, "Do you want to shop for refrigerators? What's wrong with your old one?" Jen laughed. "Nothing. Well, it's for my garage, for the lunches. Are you in?" Jen had rounded up a group of parents to house the bagged lunches while they worked on funding the kitchen. "Well, when you put it that way, yes." "Great. I'll pick you up in 5. Madison hung up and glanced at her clothes. Was this going to be another one of their non-date dates? Shit, she wasn't even showered and she didn't have time. She brushed her teeth, changed her clothes, and stuffed her hair into a baseball cap. A huge black truck pulled up at the curb just as her phone dinged. "Here." Madison stared at the cab, and sure enough, Jen was at the wheel. Climbing up into it, Madison said, "Is this your truck?" Jen grinned and patted the dashboard. "I know, it looks good on me." Madison stared at her outfit, heavy sweater, black jeans, and hiking boots, and decided she liked the look. Catching Madison's appreciative gaze, Jen winked. "I dressed down for you." Madison laughed. "I see." Apparently it was going to be another non-date date, but she didn't mind. This easy banter felt right. "It's actually Nat's. I do have an ulterior motive for inviting you." She leaned over, and Madison leaned in. For 1 second, she felt like Jen might kiss her, but then she bypassed her lips and whispered in her ear, "I need someone to do the heavy lifting." Madison's brain tripped on her words, and she pulled back. Jen's playfulness was new, and it knocked her off balance. "What?" Putting the truck in gear, Jen navigated the first few streets while she explained, "I don't want to have to wait to have it delivered. We're bringing it home today." Something about that felt flimsy. She couldn't wait a few days, but Madison didn't call her on it. She'd go pretty much anywhere to spend time with Jen. In the appliance store, Madison only paid half attention, opening and closing doors while the salesperson talked. As he showed them the features, something about Jen's tone alerted Madison to her growing annoyance. Just before he asked, "Now, are you two sisters?" Uh-oh. Madison popped her head back out and glanced at Jen. Her ability to see through Jen's facade was working overtime. The question here was, did she want to stop Jen or join in the blow-up? Jen's lips pursed and she said, "No." He looked at them for a moment and then he smiled. "But you're related, right?" Madison cut another look at Jen, her expression tight. He was a second away from getting his ass handed to him. Even though he deserved it, she chose to sidestep the blow-up with another tactic that she knew Jen would enjoy. "Honey, take a look at this." She wrapped her hand around Jen's bicep and pulled her toward a stainless steel fridge. "Wouldn't this look lovely in our beach house?" He faltered for a moment and then adjusted his pitch to their relationship status. Madison clung to Jen for the rest of the visit. Without acknowledging what was going on, they kept up the ruse for the next 2 stores, with Jen grabbing her hand in the next one and Madison picking hers up on the third one. Halfway through the second store, it stopped being a game, and Madison let herself sink into the fantasy of being Jen's girlfriend. The more she played, the more she wanted it to be real. This project between them made it hard to discern Jen's true feelings. These non-date dates were killing her. Did Jen even see her as a dating partner? It was hard to tell. And if she did, how did they start dating when they'd already slept together? Once outside, she let go of Jen's hand, tired of the ruse, but Jen pulled Madison against her. Madison put her hands on Jen's shoulders to stop herself from falling into her. Jen steadied her and said, "You're getting very good at playing my girlfriend." Distracted by Jen's closeness, Madison ignored her uncertainty and demurred, "I've had practice." Jen raised her eyebrows. "So you fake date other women?" "Only you." She wanted the words to mean so much more. "I feel special." You are, she said, she thought to herself, but Jen's smile did things to her that made her want to show her. But she had no idea how Jen truly felt, so Madison slipped away and called over her shoulder, "You should." Jen sagged against the truck, trying to control her desire to chase Madison. Fuck, what was she doing? Shopping together had turned out to be the most domestic and erotic thing she'd ever done. All those little touches, overt and furtive, in front of the salespeople. After a particularly teasing touch, Jen had almost dragged her out behind the garden section. The only thing holding her back was the on-again, off-again signals she was getting, like now. They kept coming up to this line only to step back. It was frustrating and exciting and had her totally aroused. Taking a deep breath, she clambered into the truck. It was almost noon and she was getting hungry. "Can I buy you lunch?" Maybe they'd talk about what was going on. The young woman who greeted them at the door shrieked and hugged Madison. An unexpected stab of jealousy rushed through Jen. Madison pulled back and grabbed Jen's hand. "Jen, this is my cousin, Deanna." "Oh, cousin." Deanna gave Jen a quick hug, and Jen's pettiness disappeared with Deanna's warm smile. Deanna then whispered something in Madison's ear. Madison blushed and shook her head. Judging from the way Deanna looked at her, Jen figured she was being checked out. What she couldn't decide was if it was favorable or not, and for once, that mattered to her. Deanna led them through the cramped dining room toward a tiny table in the back. Jen turned her attention to Madison and smiled. "What did she whisper to you?" Madison blushed. She grabbed her napkin and fiddled with a knot. She asked if this was a date. Jen found her slight awkwardness charming, and her heart melted a little bit more. Taking a wrist, she asked, "And is it?" Madison held eye contact while fidgeting with her utensils. "I don't know. Is it?" Jen wanted to laugh. Of course Madison threw it back. They really needed to talk, but the idea that this thing between them would dissipate in the harsh light of reality kept her quiet. She skirted the truth instead. "Well, if it is, I'm not sure I want to own up to it. I mean, really, who takes a date appliance shopping?"
I love that. Seduction in the gardening section. I love how you can take these everyday experiences, right? Like they're shopping for a refrigerator, and because they're, have an attraction and there's an interest and they have this kind of ruse in this game with a fake relationship, you elevate it to something that's really kind of special and exciting, and that's cool. I love that about romances. All right, next up I am going to screen share the video that we got from Joy Argento, simply because I'm not entirely sure I can do this. And if I do it now, I won't have to worry about it.
Let's do it.
Alrighty. All right, Joy's book is called No Regrets. It is a contemporary romance, and here is her reading.
Hi, I'm Joy Argento. This is my third book with Bold Strokes Books, No Regrets. It's a romance about Beth and Jody, who start out as friends and of course discover they have much deeper feelings than that. There's lots of obstacles in their way, including other relationships. Ran down my arm at the contact. I rested my forehead against hers. Tears leaked out of my closed eyes. "Oh my God," I whispered. It was all I could manage to say. I felt her arms go around me and pull me in tighter. For a brief moment, the horrible truth left my mind, and I was filled with the closeness of her. She felt so alive in my arms. How could she be dying? I thought back to the first day I ever saw her, more than 6 years ago. She walked into my hair salon and plunked herself down in my chair. Her green eyes bright, her face lit up with a smile. She chatted away as I snipped new layers into her long brown hair. I found out later she had just turned 40. "Beth," she said, reading my name tag. "Short for anything? Elizabeth? Bethany?" "Nope, just Beth, plain and simple. That's me." Her smile expanded. "I doubt that. Doesn't seem like there would be anything plain and simple about you." I couldn't help but return her smile. She just had that effect on me. I assumed she had that effect on everyone. "How long have you worked here?" she asked. "Since I bought the place 1.5 years ago." I'd scrimped and saved every penny to make my desire to have my own salon a reality. Working for other people, especially the chain salons, had been a nightmare. This, on the other hand, was my dream. I'm impressed. Probably shouldn't admit this, but I usually cut my own hair. My daughter yells at me every time. She says I've had the same hairstyle since 1995. She wasn't even alive in 1995, so I'm not sure how she would know that. My name's Jody, by the way. I mentally scolded myself for not asking. "Nice to meet you, Jody. Your hair is pretty even. Looks like you've been doing a decent job." Not that I'm suggesting you continue that practice. I tilted my head as I looked at her in the mirror. Can I get that in writing to show my daughter? I laughed at her joke. Sure. How many kids do you have? I like chatting with the clients. I truly enjoyed good conversation, and if they liked you, they were more likely to return, which was just plain good for business. My partner and I have two. Well, I have two, and she helps me raise them. My daughter's 9 and my son's 13. How about you? Any kids? Partner. She didn't look gay. Not that I was 100% sure what gay looked like. I really didn't know any gay women personally. If some of them looked like Jody, they may have slipped by my awareness. Does that mean you don't have any kids or that you don't want to talk about it? I realized I had been lost in my own thoughts and hadn't answered the question. 1, she's 17. I ran my fingers through her damp hair, pulling out a bit at the ends to see if I had missed anything. Wow, you must have been 5 when you had her, because you certainly don't look old enough to have a kid that age. I was young when I had her. I was the same age she was now. Her father, otherwise known as a sperm donor to my family, left me soon after I told him I was pregnant. I hadn't seen or heard from him since. I tried to get in touch once, shortly after Maddie was born, to tell him he had a daughter. I couldn't locate him, and I never tried again. Maddie asked me lots of questions about him when she was young, but didn't seem to care anymore. She currently had more interest in running with the fast crowd and skipping school than discussing her parentage, and that included me. The less she knew about me or heard from me, the better, in her opinion. I didn't let her get away with much, and she didn't like it. I brought my attention back to Jody. Thank you, was all I said, certain she wasn't interested in my life story. The phone next to the cash register rang. Cindy, one of my 3 hairstylists, came out of the back room. I've got it, she said. Hello, sheer perfection. I'd be happy to assist you. She followed the exact script my girls had to memorize. Sure, hold on, please. She pressed the hold button and turned to me. Beth, it's Robertson's Sign Shop. They want to know about stopping by to give you an estimate. I didn't like stopping when I was with a client. Tell them I'll call them back after 4. I took a couple more snips on Jody's hair and gave it a quick once-over with the blow dryer. You need a sign painter, Jody asked. Yeah, the one out there isn't up to code. I didn't know it until last week when an inspector stopped by. I just happened to be a sign painter. You are not, I said, certain she was teasing me. There, what do you think? I fluffed up her hair a bit with my fingers. It looks great, thank you. She brought her attention back to me. I really am a sign painter. She pulled out a thin wallet from her back pocket and fished out a business card. Jody Michaels, sign painter extraordinaire. Extraordinaire? It means I'm superb, exceptional, really, really good, Jody laughed. I smiled. I know what it means. I've just never seen it on a business card before. Well, how are people going to know how good you are if you don't tell them? My grandmother always told me it was okay to blow my own horn. Better to blow than to suck, she always said. She did, huh? Well, I might be paraphrasing, but it was something like that. I can give you an estimate for a new sign if you want. She put her hands up in front of her. No pressure. I could use a sign painter extraordinaire, but I'm afraid you might be out of my budget. I don't have a lot to spend. I'm really good. I'm not really expensive, and we could probably trade part of it for haircuts for me and the kids if you want. I unhooked the plastic cape around Jody's neck and shook it off behind the chair. It wouldn't hurt to get one more estimate. All right. We could set up a time and meet, and I can tell you exactly what I need. I'll bring pictures of my work and references. She stood and wiped a few stray pieces of hair off her jawline. I wasn't sure how I'd missed them. You have my number, she said. I do? Yep, right there on that little card I handed you. I felt the blush of embarrassment creeping up my face as I looked at the card in my hand. Of course. I waved the card in the air. I have your number. I'll give you a call tonight if that's all right. That works. I'll be home. It's okay if I call you at home? Your partner won't mind? I wondered how it was with 2 women. I didn't mean the sexual part. I could figure that out. I mean just the day-to-day stuff. Did one mind if another woman called? They must not. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed to be friends with other women. They would only be friends with men. And who would want to be friends with men? Men were good for a lot of things, like sex and fixing things. But for friends, I much preferred the friendship of women. Jody gave a little chuckle. She doesn't care. That's my cell number. We walked over to the cash register, and Jody handed me her credit card. I ran it through and handed it back to the woman who would change my life in ways I couldn't even fathom in that moment.
All right.
No
Thank
joy.
you, Melissa Brayden, for saving me. Live and learn.
No problem. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to hear.
I feel like I need a business called Sheer Perfection so I can answer the phone. Hello, Sheer Perfection. How can I help you?
Yes. That'd be wonderful.
We're going to have to steal that one. All right. Next up, we have the lovely Jane Walsh, who is reading from her November release, A Lady to Love. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and start reading whenever you are ready.
So my name is Jane Walsh, and I write queer historical fiction, specifically Regencies. And if you aren't familiar with that subgenre, a Regency is a romance set in early 1800s England. So if you like the Jane Austen era, beautiful women in ball gowns, a lot of scandal, gossip, flirting, then I really hope that you'll enjoy Her Lady to Love, which is my very first book, my debut, and I'm super excited about it. And I love this cover. Look at this cover. Okay. So this is the story of a shy wallflower, Lady Honora, and a popular party girl, Miss Jacqueline Lockhart. Nora is looking for a husband, and Jackie is just looking really to have fun. So 1 week ago, they met each other. They literally bumped into each other when Nora ran into her at a dance. And to apologize for running into her, Nora has sent Jackie a pair of dance shoes as a replacement that she thinks she's damaged Jackie's shoes at the ball. So now it's 1 week later, and the ladies have bumped into each other again, this time at the opera. Miss Lockhart tossed those gorgeous locks of hair so they fell against her bosom. Several interested pairs of male eyes looked their way. The opera is always a bore, she proclaimed. I would do most anything to forget that we're at such a tedious event. Nora narrowed her eyes. I think it's exhilarating. Aren't you fresh from the country? Miss Lockhart asked. I expect most things are entertaining when you have so little to compare them to. Miss Lockhart's father returned and handed round the drinks that he had been so kind to fetch during the intermission. Relieved, Nora took her glass, eager for the courage that the wine might lend to her, and spilled the entire cup on her dress. With a horrified gasp, she watched the red wine soak into the white satin like blood. The opera could not have provided more drama than she felt in that moment. Faintly, she stammered an excuse and hurried away, cheeks flushed, before her aunt could chaperone her to the retiring room. Nora sat on a low stool and examined the damage to her dress, a feeling of helplessness stealing over her. But she had fled with as much intent to compose herself as to fix the stain. So she sat still, took a deep breath, and tried not to crumple her satin skirts in pure frustration. How embarrassed she felt on an evening that had promised so much. Lady Honora, are you quite all right? Nora sucked in a sharp breath. There was Miss Lockhart stepping through the door like a vision in a pale blue gown that floated around her curves. Her stomach dropped. She had not had a single drop of wine to drink from her spilled glass, but her head spun as if she were half a bottle in. Miss Lockhart, thank you for your kind attention, she replied. But it's a stain, nothing more. You needn't have left your admirers. And the second act is going to be starting soon. Well, that's no reason to hurry, Miss Lockhart replied with a grin, and flung herself into an elegant chair. I can hear the music starting up again, so you've already missed part of it. Personally, I plan to stay here as long as I can, maybe even for the duration of the entire next act. That soprano is dreadful. Nora struggled to regain her usual composure. Well, if you wish to return, I'm sure the gentlemen can distract you from the stage. Oh, them, she said dismissively. Gentlemen are as common as grapes on the vine, and that lot was nothing special. Miss Lockhart's face brightened, and Nora felt several degrees warmer by the light in her eyes. By the by, thank you ever so much for the dance shoes, Lady Honora. I received them last week, and they are quite the prettiest pair in my wardrobe. Nora was flustered. Oh no, the rose dance shoes, the note! Panicked, she tried to remember what she had scribbled that afternoon at the shoe emporium. Nothing personal, nothing intimate, she recalled with relief. Nothing had been put into writing that she truly wanted to say when she looked at Miss Lockhart. Nora swallowed and said, I simply wanted to express my regret at having damaged your own pair. Nora, it was unnecessary, Miss Lockhart assured her. But I think that's the hallmark of the very best kind of gift. Those slippers deserve to have an exquisite dress made just for them, which will give me an excellent reason to visit my modiste. So I really must thank you. This was only friendship, Nora reminded herself. She was in danger of forgetting herself in Miss Lockhart's presence, captivated by her charm. A heartbeat passed and Nora spoke. I should return. My aunt will be wondering where I am. Lady Mildred must know that you're here in the retiring room. Where else would you be? Besides, the longer that wine settles into the fabric, the less chance you have to remove it. Come, let's fix it together. Nora looked at her in alarm. Oh no, please don't trouble yourself. But Miss Lockhart was already applying herself to her supple leather gloves. She worked the pearl buttons free of their looped buttonholes and peeled the gloves from her hands, freeing finger by finger. Nora's mouth went dry at the sight of those beautiful hands, narrow and slender. There was a basin of water on a low shelf for washing up. Miss Lockhart reached out her bare hand to clasp Nora's gloved one and pulled her to her feet. She tugged her over to the basin, as if her touch didn't crack through Nora with a thunderclap of physical awareness. I think we shall get the stain out in a trice, she said, and she dipped the fabric in the basin and rubbed at it, bending low over the skirt with industrious effort. Nora looked down at her glossy raven hair, in its elegant array of curls, and was close enough to smell her perfume. Orange blossom. She inhaled, savoring the scent. After a moment, Miss Lockhart looked up. I should confess something, she said. I've never done this before, and I don't think I'm helping. They looked at the white satin, which now sported a large water stain. Instead of fading, the red wine spread, slowly but surely. They looked at the fabric, then at each other, and all of a sudden both of them were laughing and laughing. Nora clutched the back of a chair with one hand, the other low on her belly as she tried to stop her whoops of laughter. When had she last laughed like this? When had anything been so funny? When had she had a friend like this? Could she count Miss Lockhart as a friend? Miss Lockhart wiped tears from her eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. Well, your maid can spend tomorrow morning soaking your dress, providing that I haven't done irreparable damage. We should go now, Nora said. We've really been here long enough, and my aunt will be on edge if I'm unchaperoned. Miss Lockhart again rolled her eyes. I'm sure your aunt doesn't expect you to be up to no good in the ladies' retiring room of all places. We don't need a chaperone here. But the crackle of awareness remained, and they locked eyes. Nora remembered her gaze earlier when they were sitting together during the first act of the opera, and was quite sure that she was not the only one who felt the pull between them. Thank you.
Yay. That was great.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jane. I don't know if I was the only one who was trying to figure out how to fit a ladies' retiring room into my house, but
That's the dream.
Yes.
I feel like we all need one now. And that dress and those shoes.
Post haste, yes.
And also a Miss Lockhart would be wonderful. All right. So I guess we're done, right? We're done. We should go home.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
No? Oh, Melissa Brayden. Of course, we didn't forget.
I could read if you want.
Well, since you're here, you know.
All right, since I'm here anyway. I will be reading today from my November release. We're all reading from our November releases, To Tangle, which is a Tangle Valley romance. And this particular book is Gabriella's story. And she is the chef on the vineyard and is opening a brand new restaurant. And so then she meets Ryan, who is the contractor who's hired to renovate the building and turn the place into the brand new restaurant. And Ryan is a bit of a player about town, and Gabriella is known as a sweetheart. So they have a little bit of a different perspective on life, but a lot of chemistry at the same time. And just to kind of spice things up a little bit, they play for opposite teams in the town softball league. So Gabriella plays for the Muskrats, and Ryan plays for the Otters. So there's a little bit of competitive tension there as well. And in this particular scene, it's just a little bit of batting practice that takes place after a game. Well, look which otter the cat dragged in, Gabriella said. The game had ended and the Muskrats had improved their record. They were stepping it up this season, and Gabriella was a big part of that momentum. Just scoping out the future competition, Ryan said, pulling herself out of it. She gave Gabriella's bill an affectionate shake. You look great out there. Your swing has me envious. She shrugged, humbly facing the fact about her own skills. Mine lacks follow-through. I can give you some pointers if you want, Gabriella said. Oh, Ryan liked that idea a lot, and her face heated like an idiot. She didn't give a damn. I'd love it. I was watching yours tonight. It's not bad. A little low, but I think it's your hips that are giving you trouble too, not just your follow-through. How do you know so much about softball? Ryan asked, squinting. Gabriella had taken her hat off and let her long hair down. It was a little wild from being kept up through the game, and now that translated to unencumbered and sexy as hell. Something to do in Jersey to stay out of trouble, Gabriella said. She shrugged. I've always been more of a rule follower. It suits you, the rule following. Says a non-rule follower. Ryan made sure to appear shocked, confused, and offended, none of which she was. You don't know that. Oh, please, Gabriella said with a laugh. Speeding tickets? Oh, well, I get out of those, Ryan said simply. Because of the way you look. No, it's my charm. Trust me, it's both. Doesn't mean you didn't break the damn law. Ryan widened her eyes. You're swearing at me now. It's getting serious between us. Gabriella held her gaze. Yeah, maybe. Gabriella's game had been the last of the night, and most of the crowd had shuffled out of the complex. The snack bar dropped its window closed, and they were alone on the side field. What about that swing? Ryan asked, reminding them of the mission at hand. Gabriella straightened, all back to business now. Show me your stance. Ryan picked up a bat, faced the front as if preparing for a pitch. She felt Gabriella's gaze on her, and that had an effect on a lot of things. Yeah, it's here, Gabriella said quietly, touching Ryan's hip. Ryan rolled her lips in at the contact. She experienced a recognizable stirring in her lower body, shoved it to the side, and remained still, attempting to listen. Gabriella moved behind Ryan, her body close and her voice quiet. If you just adjust your hips back like this, you'll level your more force into your swing. You gotta keep your follow through though. Hips back and more follow through, Ryan repeated. Let's see it. Ryan blinked, still recovering from the moment prior. Gabriella's hands on her hips, the heat of her body from behind. Right, the swing. She took a moment to reset her stance, hips back as instructed, and swung through. Yes, like that. See, Gabriella said, clapping. It's subtle, but it really does make a difference. Ryan grinned, straightening. I have to point out to you that you just handed your opponent a better hitter. Gabriella pointed at her face. Do I look nervous? You look beautiful, Ryan said without pause. I'm not sure there's much you could do to change that. Gabriella's lips parted slightly at the compliment she didn't seem to expect. Charmer? No. She shook her head seriously. Sometimes I'm charming. Tonight, I'm just me. Gabriella looked skyward, and a moment later, Ryan understood why. The first drop of rain hit her arm, the second her shoulder. Gabriella frowned. Uh-oh. The sentence had barely fled her lips before the heavens opened up in a full-on storm. Whoa, Ryan said, wincing at the assault of huge drops. Gabriella let out a little scream, followed by a laugh. Get your stuff, hurry! They scrambled with hats and bat bags and gloves, but it was too late to save themselves, and they both knew it. The rain had drenched them in a matter of seconds, and they laughed their way in defeat to the parking lot, hopping into Ryan's truck for shelter. With soaked clothes and wet hair and faces, they looked at each other in shock. That wasn't supposed to happen, Gabriella said, still laughing, because what else could they do? Oregon for you. Are you drenched? Gabriella nodded, pulling her yellow, wet shirt from her skin as rain pelted the windshield with force. Beyond. Yeah, me too. Ryan attempted to see through the glass of the windshield with little success. We should maybe wait a few minutes, see if Mother Nature will grant us a window to escape. Gabriella looked over at her. You played great today, she said quietly. Ryan faced her. Oh, you too, that line drive you caught? She shook her head, remembering the little hop that had propelled Gabriella into the air and back down again with the ball. You continue to shock me out there. Why is that? I don't know, just girls I crush on don't tend to be such badasses. I mean, they're nice enough and smart enough, but you dominate everything you set out to do, it seems. Gabriella blinked. You have a crush on me? Please, you know I do. But then Ryan realized something. She'd insinuated as much, but she'd never really expressed the words out loud. I mean, I knew you liked to flirt with me, but they're different. Ryan exhaled slowly, realizing she was now wading into deeper waters. Didn't matter. Here went nothing. Like I said, I think about you a lot. I mean, you're fun to be around and you call me out on my bullshit. You're really friendly and warm and confident and so beautiful that every time you walk into a room, it just... She didn't get to finish because Gabriella's lips were on hers as the world skidded to a glorious, mystifying pause. Gabriella had leaned across the center of the cab and caught Ryan's mouth, pressing her soft and surprisingly warm lips to Ryan's. Just as Ryan had a chance to absorb what was happening, Gabriella pulled back an inch, met her eyes briefly, before going back in, this time determined, hungry, and hot as hell.
Wow. I mean, damn if Melissa Brayden just didn't make softball sexy.
It can be.
No, I'm not a sports person, so I'm just not prepared for my level of engagement. Thank you. That was awesome.
Sure, you're welcome.
Oh, yep, there's lots of people agreeing in the chat roll. Softball. I understand now. I mean, I didn't get it before, but...
I played for many seasons. Second base, that was me.
Really?
Yeah, for about, I guess, 6 years on a rec team here in town until I broke my foot diving for a line drive, and I came up on my foot wrong and broke it. And then after that, I just played one more season. It was too rough.
Wow.
Yeah, it happens.
All right. So we are done with our readings, and we have just about 10 minutes, which is a good time for questions. Okay, I'm going to start with one that I maybe haven't asked before, which is kind of strange. But who is your favorite character in this book? It doesn't have to be the main character. Maybe it's a side character that you've just kind of like fallen in love with, or they're particularly interesting for some reason. But do you have a favorite character in this book, and why are they your favorite? Jane.
It's a cold call.
All of the characters are special in their own way, right? You kind of love all of them for sure. But my favorite characters are probably the secondary characters. And probably the reason why is that they're fun to write, because they can come on the page and they can be funny or they can be warm, and that's all they need to be in that scene, and then you don't have to really develop the rest of it necessarily. Like, they have their purpose to come in, do their role, and go out. So I have a real fondness for them because they make things easier. My favorite character is probably Jackie's friend Beatrice, who was a lot of fun to write. Beatrice is a spoiled, stuck-up person who I really was fond of her. Like, I thought she was very funny, and she actually will get a book after this, so cool. She'll become probably not my favorite character in that book. I'll probably have another secondary character that I'll latch onto first.
I feel the same way, actually. I feel like the main characters are so deep in their heads. You're kind of like, oh, I'm sick of you. Like, I'm done now. But this secondary characters are just cute and fun and charming, and I think I end up liking them better. Leigh, how about you? Which character do you like the best?
Well, Jen's a little closer to me because she's a mom, and I wrote her while he was much younger, and I was just interacting with people in these weird situations as a parent where you're like, what am I doing here, and why am I here? Oh, right, this thing. So, but she gets to, but I also like torturing her because she's like smooth and kind of, she's quick-witted, but she always gets caught flat-footed, and I like doing that to her. So she was fun to write that way. So yeah.
All right, there you go. Leigh Hays likes torturing her characters. Good to know. Melissa, how about you?
I guess I have a two-part answer. I would most want to be friends with Gabriella because she's super optimistic and kind of a free spirit. And so she's a lot of what you see is what you get, which is refreshing. But in terms of writing, there is a group of 4 elderly women in this series called the Biddies, and their job in life is just to spread gossip around town, and they are a lot of fun to write because they cause all sorts of trouble. And literally, if I get it myself written into a corner, the Biddies can always get me out of it. And so I have a great time writing that foursome.
That's great. Are they in the previous book in this series too?
Yes, they're in all 3 books, and they shuffle around town, and they meddle in everything, and they spread rumors, and they have social media pages where they post pictures of people that they spot, and they've recruited spies. And I do develop their story a little bit more in book 3 coming up later in early 2021, but we do see them a lot in book 1 and 2.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, I am going to our Q&A panel. Do you ever work on 2 books at the same time? And if you do, how do you manage your workflow? And I think this question can apply to other publishing tasks. If you have more than 1 book on our schedule, we often have proofreading and whatnot going on at the same time. So how do you manage all your writing responsibilities? Leigh?
I try not to do the same kind of thing at the same time. So I'll be beta reading, not hopefully at the same time I'm writing or editing. I'll be researching. Researching is the thing that I do to kind of reward myself because it's my favorite part. So I'll be doing that when I'm hardcore writing something. Sometimes I'll just be reading a book going, oh, I think I'm going to, research, fishing. So I'll be reading a fishing book or something like that. So yeah, that's how I just try not to do the same thing, but sometimes it all gets mushed sometimes if I haven't done the right planning. So that's how I do it.
Well, bonus points if you can make fishing sexy, because
I'll try. I have a fisher.
I feel like you could. I mean, this is a challenge. It needs to happen.
Waiters, they're all the rage.
Melissa, how about you? How do you handle writing 2 books at the same time, or your responsibilities?
I generally at any given point have 4 books in a various stage. 1 is in pre-writing. Usually we're getting together information about what that book will be, but nothing's been written yet. 1 is being written currently. 1's in editing, and then I'm doing something like this, which would be marketing or promotion for a book that's done and coming out soon. And so for me, the hardest task is writing. And if I have words to write, that's where I should be focusing my time. But sometimes you sit down and it's just not there, but you have the whole work day that you need to be productive. And so I'll switch a hat and I'll move into marketing mode, or I will start working on some pre-writing for a book that's coming up next. But I can't be idle, so I have to figure out what do I have in me today to give to one project or another. But writing always does come first.
That's true. That's a good way to structure it. Get your best hours of the day focused on writing.
Yes, you have to use them.
Cool. Jane, how about you?
Well, I'm the newbie here, so I'm definitely still trying to figure out how to manage this. So it's really interesting to hear different approaches on this, because I have this first book that's out in November, and I am currently working on the second book. And while I was writing the second book, I did have editing and proofing and that kind of stuff on the first one. And I was very confident, and I was like, I can do this, no problem. Like, check, check, check. I know what I have to do on Her Lady to Love. So I already know that book so well. So it should just be a snap to do all this other stuff. It won't interfere with the creative process. I have like a different time that I do that. And that was just not the case at all. So when I was editing Her Lady to Love, I had to totally stop all work on the next book. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even research. Like, I couldn't even think about it. Like, I totally shelved it for like a month while I went through the editing process. And I'm hoping that someday I can find a way to like make those processes more streamlined, and then maybe I can tackle some elements of each at the same time. But we'll see. We'll see when I get there.
I think the first book is always especially nerve-wracking. So
it's a journey. It's a ride.
You may find things even out over time. Okay, we have a question. How do you come up with your character pairs? This is actually a really good question. What do you think about in terms of which characters pair well for a romance with other characters? Do you think about personality types, or how do you come up with your pairs? Leigh.
I usually start with like sometimes it's their job or their occupation. Now one would hope that I would pick the love interest that's like kind of counterintuitive to that, but so far I've never done that, and that irks me every time. I'm like, oh, I think Aurora Ray wrote one. Well, the contractor and the restaurant. What a great pairing, keeping them together. No, I tend not to do that, which is my own problem. But so it's definitely. And then I think emotionally, like, what would be the worst person for this person to be with, or like not necessarily worse, but like, what would make this person be somebody that they would have issues with having a relationship with. So that's sort of what I do, but it's often an occupation that draws me in, or I'm like, oh, I'm fascinated by fishing. Let's do that one.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Melissa Brayden, how do you come up with your pairs?
It's different in every book. I'm kind of going through it in my mind, but if I were to narrow it down to two different ways that I come to my pairings, number one would be conflict driven. A lot of times you think about two people that cannot be together for one reason or another. If I go back to Soho and Kiss the Girl, they were rival ad agencies and they hated each other. So there was no way they could ever be in a romance together. And so that was fun to figure out, how can this relationship work? But another way is, when you go to a department store and you try on clothes or try on an outfit, I tend to do that with characters and dialogue. And it's all internal in my imagination. But okay, if I have a restaurateur, what kind of personality, and she's really sunshiny and fun, pairing her with a player, I might actually kind of hear them talk to each other in my head and see how it works out. And if it's not a good match, then I'll play around again in a brainstorming session. But the dialogue helps me know if it's a good fit or not. And it has to be a couple that I'm excited about, because if I'm not excited to sit down and write them, then it probably won't be very good.
I like that. There's this kind of concept of, and Leigh was saying this too, in terms of opposites and having them clash. And that's where kind of all the tension is. Jane, how about you? How do you come up with your romantic pairs?
I wish I had like a more structured answer, because I feel like more structure would actually help me in the writing process. But instead, it's kind of a more organic, kind of like what comes out of I was going to say out of the pen, but of course I type on a laptop. But it's kind of whatever happens. Like I see the characters emerging, like I kind of have to write a few scenes to see who they even are. It's not necessarily like pre-planned. It just kind of like comes out when you're like, oh, this person. And they're flirting with this other person, and that's cute. So it's really more of a try it and see what sticks kind of approach, where you just see how it reads and how it reacts on the page.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. Some kind of subconscious decision making going on there, but feels very kind of fresh and interesting, and like it's happening of its own accord. It's cool. All right, we have 1 minute exactly. Here's Sherry Lewis Wall.
For the last minute, she's here.
Dropped in at the last possible second. Hi, Sherry.
Hello.
Did you know that you were on the 5 p.m. reading panel, Sherry?
Am I late?
Yeah, you are. You are. It's now 5:50, but we are happy you are here.
I am not in my time zone. And so I thought I was on time.
You know what? That's okay. We will set you up. We'll grab you for the next panel. How about that?
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. As we say goodbye, we are going to do a really quick speed round. The last lesfic book you read. Give a shout out to a lesfic book that you like. The last lesfic book that you read. Melissa.
Oh, it was George's last one, the pie book.
There you go, pie book.
It made me want pie.
Flavor of the Month by George Pierce.
Yes. Thank you.
Jane.
Mine was actually Melissa Brayden, the first book in the Entangled series.
Okay,
awesome.
Entangled by Melissa Brayden. Leigh.
Aurora Ray's, I don't even know the title. I beta read that one. It was the last one I read. So I can't remember. What? No, not Twice Shy. It's further out.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to say Twice Shy by Aurora Ray so that everyone can go buy it.
That's fine.
What was the last lesbic book that you read? Give a shout out.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm with Leigh. It was Aurora Hayes' book. Anytime she writes, I love it. So, but I can't remember the title either.
Oh, boy, you guys.
Twice Shy.
Twice Shy. Everyone
Twice
go buy
Shy. It had cupcakes. It's Twice Shy.
Well, that was it. Yes, it was
There
the
you go.
cupcakes.
There you go.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. We will see you in just a few minutes for the 6 p.m. panel. Bye, everyone.
Bye.